Hello everybody, I'm Colin Baker, the Sixth Doctor, and you are so lucky, because you are watching the Omega Files, and I'm in it at the moment, but the next bit isn't me, it's something even better.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to the series finale edition of the Omega Files. Yes, the Battle of Ranskoor, Kolos, whatever it was. Interesting title, say the least. Interesting story. I was talking about the guys here briefly about what I think about it, and I think we're definitely going to have a divisive episode here coming. So sit back, put on your seatbelts, and prepare to enjoy the ride. Okay, we're going to start at the bottom this time since I've been starting at the top like almost every other time this time. So we're going to start with Texas. Tim, what did you think of the Battle of Ranskoor, Kolos?
I thought it was okay. It wasn't bad. It was kind of sci-fi for a change, which is welcome. I do think that the Doctor was a little bit better this time, a bit more doctorish. It was a bit more of a Doctor Who episode, I think, that we're kind of think we might have been getting this year. But and I like the bit that you know, she's having to pay for some mistake she made early on, or you know, in other words, there's somebody that wants revenge for something she did to them, and that happened earlier in the series. So that was kind of cool, kind of face of evil, like, you know, like, I mean, in other words, I just regenerate, I'm running around doing stupid things, and here, you know, now I have to pay for it. But I don't think it was really cool to kind of rip off the pirate planet that way, with the planets in the little boxes like that. That was just a bit of a blatant steal. I mean, it kind of fits the story, but I think they could have come up with something different than that. I mean, overall, I'd say it was a pretty good series finale. I didn't really have a big problem with it. I think the Graham and Ryan got a bit too mushy a couple of times, but I think they had to address it. You finally had the little fist pump or whatever, which is whatever. I mean, that's just corny. They could have done that a lot quicker and a lot better, I think. But overall, in general, I think it was a pretty good series finale.
Oh, BKB? All right, Vil. Whenever you're done chewing, Vil.
Well, that and finding my mute button. I'm pretty much right there with him. I wouldn't say it was a great episode, but when you compare it to what we've got all season, it really is one of the best. I'd say I liked it as much as last week. I'm glad that it was science fiction for a change. The Doctor was actually acting the part again, which was a pleasant surprise. It could have been a lot better, and I do agree that I feel like they were ripping off the pirate planet a bit, but it was at least well executed, and at least it finally felt like Doctor Who and less like preaching to the class.
All righty. Okay, I can see where you're going at there, because, yeah, we've been hearing the lecturing argument for a while. So, okay, Beef, your turn.
Doctor Who makes me feel a lot of things. Sometimes it makes me happy, sometimes it makes me feel sad. But tonight, it sort of left me feeling a bit angry by the end of it, to be honest with you. Look, I know you guys have liked it and everything like that, and yeah, there was a bit more of a sci-fi element to it, but for God's sake, this was a season finale. And it was just not good. You know, I don't want to have to settle for second best anymore, and you know, and mediocrity. And this was at best mediocre. Yeah, because we, through the press, releases of pictures, we knew that none of the team were going to go this week. So that sort of takes a lot of the wind out of the sails of it to a certain degree. Yeah, Jodie was okay, you know, like we've said before, she gets 90% of the way there, but doesn't get that 10%. So it's sort of, it's just that. It's mediocre at best. Yaz was just pretty much pointless again. You have the obligatory Ryan and Graham scene, but the story, the writing was just atrociously bad. It was just all built on a lot of very convenient circumstances that they have to take lock decoders, whereas, to be honest with you, Jodie uses the sonic for everything. You have this battlefield of 9 destroyed ships and everything, 8 destroyed ships, because there's been 9 there, They've sent 8 there, so I know, let's just send 1 to try and sort this out. There's a battlefield. You'd be a madman to go through it, but they stroll through the whole thing and they walk right up to the front door. It's just there's so much convenience on this. You've got basically creatures who can understand how the TARDIS works, who live for millennia, but basically believe the first thing that falls out of the sky and treats that as a god. I'm sorry, it's too much convenient placing, and the story is just lazy. And that's it just frustrated the living hell out of me by the end of it. It really did. It just at this point, it's sort of where that, I've never felt as close as I did tonight to saying, do you know what, I'm just done with it. I'm just sick of being sort of having this point at end of every week, sort of saying maybe next week. The best thing about this week was the trailer for next week, and it seems to be the same thing every bloody week. You're looking at the next one and thinking, oh well, maybe next week they'll get it, and it's sort of after this one, it's an even longer break. Maybe they need to take a longer one.
Okay. Paul.
Hiya. Yeah, I have to agree with a lot of the previous comments. As a season finale, taking into account the current season, it was okay. But like Beef, okay isn't really still good enough. Like previous seasons, needs to be better. Yeah, that's all I can say, really. Starting off.
All right. Philip.
Okay, yeah. As much as this was meant to be a season finale, it didn't feel like one for me. It could have been any story slotted within the season run for me. But then I thought about it. I thought in the old days, old Doctor Who, when you had season finales, they weren't always bombastic and bang, fashion and whistles. So I forgive it for that, for one thing. The other thing now is, of all the things that you can have at the finale, you have Tim Shaw. A big crybaby going, I want to get my own back on Doctor because you pissed me off in the beginning. So it's like, what kind of story is that? A disgruntled, two-faced man because he couldn't get what he wanted out of things. And then you've got the fact of, oh God, Ryan and Graham, nah. Why do we have to keep hearing about this? It's over and done with. Stop going on with that. What are you gonna have next season? Daddy issues because Daddy's coming back at Christmas. No way. No, thank you very much. And then you got the fact of I forgot one of my train of thought. But the point what I'm trying to say is it just didn't satisfy me, this story. It felt just like a damp squib. I wanted a bit more than what we got, and I didn't get it. Basically.
Okay, DWC.
It wasn't a bad episode, as some here are trying to say. It was a bit weird for me. It felt like all the elements were kind of right. It was definitely a sci-fi. There was a threat of death in there. Jodie was absolutely much better as a Doctor than she was before. But for some reason, it didn't grip me, and I didn't quite know why. But it was still okay. I will equally kind of agree here that it didn't feel like a series finale, and I think that's mostly just because we've been used to so many series finales being bombastic. Well, it isn't simply bombastic, like Philip was saying. It's the fact that almost every series has been a properly laid out story arc, and as Christian was saying, he didn't want to do that this year. He wanted standalone episodes, so maybe that's kind of why we're doing that. We've got it that way. This is, even though it's an episode that continues on from the first episode, it's still pretty standalone in a sense. But overall, like I said, it wasn't really bad. It was okay. It's not going to be one of the greats, but it's all right for what it is.
All righty. Okay. Connor.
I'm just kind of bored of Doctor Who now. I've got to agree with Beef on every point he made. I will shed no tears if this delay until 2020 is like because that the BBC hate the show. I would just rather they just killed it now, because honestly, I don't know what's become of the show. There was no threat. I cannot wait until the episode where Jodie walks on water, because it's coming, because there's nothing that will stop her. She's an extremist in her pacifism, because the way that she was talking to Graham at the beginning, it actually kind of infuriated me, because we have to remember that this alien, who is no threat to anyone, to be fair, I mean, after The Woman Who Fell to Earth aired, no one took Tim Shaw seriously, and they certainly didn't after this one, I don't think. He killed his wife. So to not allow, even though there's this whole thing about, revenge isn't always the best option, I think that he should be allowed to feel that way. But what she does is, because she can't handle negative emotions because she gets triggered by it, I guess, she just kind of has to pacify everyone so that they're all like all happy and like a fan. It's just kind of SJW pandering bollocks at this point, I think. You're not allowed to feel anything like resentment or anything negative, because you're going to have someone crying the next minute. The story, as I said, no threat. When there's no threat in Doctor Who, it just feels like 50 minutes of boring slog. And that's what it felt like. Mark Addy is a great actor, such a great actor, and he did save this to a degree. Loved him, even though he wasn't in it far as much as he should have been. Phyllis Logan and the religion thing, I think there was a lot of, I could equate it, I guess, to the current issue of Islam and ISIS, where you're using faith for evil, or your own interpretation of faith, as an evil weapon. There was the obvious rip-off to the Pirate Planet. But honestly, just like the lack of threat, I don't know what lunacy goes on in that BBC office to determine that Tim Shaw is anywhere close to threatening. I would rather have the Pating, grown in size probably. He tried to eat that planet. It would probably be far more threatening. I just don't see Tim Shaw as anything other than just a whiny, pissed off man. There's not a lot I can say. I just will not shed any tears about Doctor Who anymore, because it just feels completely bland. It's lost everything. It's lost its touch. It's lost its Midas touch.
Okay, Bo.
I quite enjoyed this episode. I thought it was really great. I thought the Doctor and Graham, Ryan, and Yes were in top form. I like the return of Tim Shaw exploiting the axe. I like how Trekkie. I thought he was really good. It was a really great episode. I quite enjoyed it.
All right. And lastly, but certainly not least, Callan.
Oh, there we go. Name just to overlay first 12 we're going. It was alright. I mean, I lost interest within the first 5 minutes, and I started playing the game on the computer. But still wasn't a bad episode. It's a bit all. It starts off, it's all singing, dancing, and right, goes down into the toilet from there. Tim Shaw isn't really very scary. It maybe is if you're a little kiddie winky, but for grown ups, he's a bit of a namby-pamby. You think most doctors would quieten him quickly.
All righty. Okay, like I said, I don't know. I kind of disagree with the majority of the panel, and I'm not afraid to say it. I did not see anything wrong with this finale. It paced well and all that. Yeah, sure. Everyone's like, what did you expect? By the time these guys got there, the battle was pretty much over. So, of course, they strolled through the field. It's not unexpected. Also, the argument that a couple of this species who can understand dimensional transcendence wouldn't still have faith in some form of supernatural being. Well, guys, I'm sorry, but I hate to inform you, but the Mayans, up to the point they disappeared, were, let me see, brilliant astronomers, were calculating numbers in the digits up to 15 to the left and the right of the decimal point, yet they were still committing human sacrifices and doing rain dances. So, extremely logical, advanced scientific people still lived in the jungle and were still doing things to themselves that you wouldn't believe in the name of a god. But what I'm saying is this: you can't say just because somebody understands a technology doesn't mean they have faith in something else. See what I mean? That argument falls apart right there. We've seen this repeatedly in our own history. But as I said, I enjoyed the episode. It was, for once, it was, I say, 95% of the way there. They almost quite hit it for a change. I was expecting like 45 minutes of crying, followed by 10 minutes of resolution. And that's actually what I was expecting. I was like, okay. And I was like, okay. And of course, come on. We all had to know it had to be Tim Shaw. I think a lot of also what happened was everybody was hearing the woman's voice and expecting it to tie into something into the past series, and it didn't happen. And I think that's some of it. And come on, we've all been discussing for the last week. We knew it was going to be Tim Shaw. So what was the big surprise? As Tim Shaw not being a threat, he was about to wipe out the whole planet Earth. I'd say that was a big threat. 7 billion people, ain't that enough of a kill count for you, let alone how many other planets he had already taken out? And it does reflect back to the pirate planet. But as I said, we've had episodes that have been eerily similar to other ones in the new series history. Like I told these guys just before he came on, I was one of the guys sitting there watching Bells of St. John going, didn't we see this a little while ago? It was called The Idiot's Lantern, where people were getting sucked off into this cyberspace thing where they're getting put into a TV. It's like, but everybody kind of praised it because of the Clara factor, but like I said, that wasn't me. So the problem is, as I've told these guys also before we came on, a lot of your basic storylines have been covered. It's been 13 years, I think, since this show started. But remember, all your basics, everything you'll read and write and listen to in school goes back to a basic formula that's been going on since the dawn of time. So what can I say? Like I said, I enjoyed the episode. I found it to be better than most of the ones they put on this year. Okay, hands are already going up. To be honest with you, I forgot to see who popped up first, so I'm going to go random.
Bill. It was Bill first.
Bill first? Okay, go ahead, Bill.
I have 2 points. The second one actually came up while you guys were talking. And yeah, I get it. If in effect he is supposed to be kind of intimidating when he's about to destroy the entire Earth, but the fact that he was unconvincing in that says a lot. And in the end, really, I watch him and I feel like a Mr. Potato Head would have been a much more intimidating villain to throw in there. As for the other point I wanted to make, it was just kind of a chuckle I was having, but I'm really hoping that it turns out that Chibnall's first season is really he and Moffat pissing on the audience for laughs before Chibnall gets serious about the show.
Okay, next up, let's go random. DWC.
Yeah, just wanted to say something I forgot to say in the introduction. One thing I did like, they actually clarified some continuity that I was curious about with the sniper bots, just having them there at all. It wasn't really clear whether the sniper bots were actually just something for the race specifically brought by the guy who was running it, or whether they were actually weapons of the Stenza, and I was rather happy they technically clarified that now by putting them there. It does kind of make me wonder, so these robots are supposed to be the first units in an invasion force or whatever before the Stenza completely finish it. Equally, I also liked a little bit of fan service in the sense that the Doctor mentions pulling using the TARDIS to pull the Earth, and I wasn't expecting the Slovene to an egg. Although it must be said, I kind of like that because when it was mentioned that those minerals were planets, immediately I thought, oh well, the TARDIS pull the planet, pull the Earth back and forth, and then she actually mentioned it. Oh, great.
Okay, Philip.
Yeah, the only thing that irks me the most about the whole thing is the fact I wish somebody got blood on their hands. In this case, Graham got his wish to blast Tim Shaw out of existence because, in effect, he's dishonoring the death of his wife by not, avenging her death. And it's like, did you not care that you lost your wife? Blow the bastard, like I say that, blow the man away. Just do it. And he's like, no, I'll just shoot him in the toe. It just,
I'm a bastard.
but it would have been a lot more interesting thing going forward, having him do that, and then the Doctor and him would have to deal with the fallout of him doing that.
But let me ask you this question, before I go on to the next person. What do you think's worse, death or being locked in one of your own stasis capsules where you're probably going to be there?
But you know that somehow he's going to work out some sort of, where he gets out of that thing. Sorry, we get out of it.
No, not necessarily.
We don't know what absolute technology the Stenza have. They might have technology where they can come out and break out of the stasis chamber. If he's got technology to do what he does to those planets, then the stasis chamber is nothing.
I don't think so. I think they're done with him, hopefully.
Okay.
Okay, Paul.
Yeah, I've been a Doctor Who fan for a long time, since the early 70s when I first watched it with John Pertwee. And I've loved Doctor Who ever since. And we've been going on about things that are missing from this series, and I think what's missing is its soul. It's lost its soul. We've been giving it high marks. I mean, myself, I've been giving it 9s, 8.5, 7.5s. But I think a lot of that is to do with the current season. I think we've lowered our expectations. This is my personal belief, that we've lowered our expectations to the current season. And that's why I've been giving it a higher score. But if we go back a few years ago, I'd say the stories then were a lot better than they are now. So yeah, although I've enjoyed the current season, it hasn't been anywhere as good as the previous seasons for me.
Okay, Beef.
Yeah, picking up what Paul is saying, I think it does. It needs to be held to a higher standard. What I've said tonight is that the story is bad. DWC said, oh, well, yeah, there's a reference to the stolen Earth because the TARDIS pulled a planet. But yeah, they actually pulled out the dialogue virtually word for word. I recognise that voice. It can't be Davros. Oh, no, it's not. It's Tim Shaw. They did. They basically took it almost word for word and recreated that scene again. Yeah, it's very convenient now that the Doctor doesn't understand Stenza technology, so she can't actually work out what the element that's being held is there. So, it's the story. If I had to put on the best thing about this episode for me was the music. The music was solid, and it built tension. But the thing is, Tim Shaw did a really great thing at the start of it. When they see him on the viewer screen, he wastes no time in basically holding a member of the crew hostage and just killing them straight away. But when the Doctor is brought to Tim Shaw, he basically sits there, rambles on a bit and everything like that, and just lets her free to roam the corridors and everything like that and just run away. But as soon as he sees Wine busting people out the stasis chamber, he's quite happy then to sort of disconnect his life support and go and have it out with him because someone's nicking his stuff. For me, it just seemed inconsistent with the Stenza, because in the first episode, it seemed like what was going on, the idea of the hunt and everything like that, was a rite of passage. But all of a sudden, it's like now it's a bit of a shift in what the Stenza are. They don't actually want to go through rites of passage. No, they want to dominate the universe, or basically he's just a bit disgruntled. And then the Doctor goes, "Don't pin this on me." Well, it is your fault, but rather than just saying, "Don't pin it on me," just nut up to it, to be honest with you, and say, well, actually push back, because there was no pushback from the Doctor. The acting was good, but she backed down from Graham, she backed down from Tim Shaw, and that's why, like I said, it's sort of, we've grown to accept mediocrity and make allowances for it, and I just think it's high time it needs to be held to a higher standard.
Okay, Connor.
To add to what Paul and Beef have just been saying there, I think that, yeah, to a certain degree, definitely personally, there's been a lot of denial around this series in that you want to like it and you almost force yourself to admit that, you know, while not everything can be perfect, at least it's good, and that's deserving of higher marks. And when I look back, especially because I think we've got to the stage now where we can fairly assess Jodie's Doctor. When I look back now to series gone by, so series 8 is a prime example of something that I've kind of had a long and hard think about. It doesn't match up. It's bad. It's horrible. It just doesn't feel like there is anything left. There's no semblance of that show anymore. It's fallen through. It's just kind of like a shell of its former self. And I gotta say that they made a lot of promises about this series. I think a lot of promises that didn't fulfill, like that they didn't follow through with them. And while not everything can be perfect, and while some people will obviously think that this was great and others will not, Jodie's Doctor is almost a new character. I don't think that she's in line with the other Doctors in that there is something extremely preachy about her, something extremely extremist about her points of view that are on the positive side of. There was one comment, I think it was on one of your videos, Brian, that you pointed out earlier, where Mark Strickson's son mentioned that it was left-wing propaganda since the dawn of time, this show. And it does feel like that, but it's an extreme left. It's like a communist sort of version of left-wing. And it's getting to the point where, like, what you're doing by being like that is negating threat, negating drama, negating great character development, because there's something that we've been talking about this week about where they haven't actually progressed as characters. And I think to a certain degree, this episode even furthered that, because the Doctor stopped Graham from feeling what he wanted to feel. And at the end, like, he just kind of admitted, well, you know, I can't shoot him because I'm a wimp. But 50 minutes earlier, he was all raring to go. And to be honest, he was quite appealing in his approach because he was getting quite wound up. And we haven't really seen that in a companion in that sort of way. And again, you know, the Doctor just pacifies everything around her because, you know, we know that she's not going to get hurt by anything anymore because this TARDIS crew are absolutely untouchable, it seems. I don't think that any one of them have gained, apart from Grace dying, an emotional or a physical scar throughout this entire... They haven't been hit by anything. They haven't been hurt. They've not been on the point of death. There's been no life or death sort of conundrum in any episode, it feels. And it's like four gods just walking through time, just dealing with everything, like without a single problem to their pursuit of, you know, timely sort of happiness. It feels completely pacified, boring, bland Doctor Who now, I think. And I think that we're at the stage now where we can fairly judge that, because we're at the end of this series. And there's been great episodes of this series, there really has. But I think compared to other series, like, there is still a massive gap between the quality of great from this series and great from past series.
Okay, Texas Tim.
Well, to follow on with this conversation, I think it's got to be a very difficult thing. I mean, this show has a very long legacy and so much history to it that you can turn on or listen to any day that you want to. And so it's got a very hard job to get this thing and make it interesting after all this time. I mean, I'm guessing other other programs that have been around forever, like Star Trek. Every time they have a new iteration of it, it has a challenge that you have to make it new and exciting for a new audience, and at the same time appease the audience that's been around for decades. And it's a very hard thing to do. And my question is, because we've been all talking about this lately, is, I mean, here's the thing: the BBC seem to be trying to make it a family-friendly show that appeals to the biggest audience, and all that really adds up to is blandness for those of us that want something a bit more challenging. But is it the case, though, that, I mean, if you handed it over to, say, some fresh new vision, something really brave and dangerous, and, you know, where you didn't know, like, say Netflix took it over or something, and it was more Marvel-like or something, for example, or where was it a great version of Doctor Who, but one that didn't appeal to the masses? Would we be happy with that? It's hard to say. I mean, it's in a situation now. It's been this way for a few years, but where you can't really do anything new with it without alienating half the audience. And on the other hand, what they're doing now is alienating most of the audience, the older audience, with blandness, which is what we've had this year pretty much. I mean, it's really been kind of by the numbers. There have been some interesting episodes, and it hasn't really been horrible. But to Connor's point, there is a tendency to be trying to trickle in a bit of the latest politics, which you could argue they've always done that. Les used to have his Buddhism references in there that were there for, if you caught them, they didn't bang you over the head with them. But I mean, my question is, I mean, where do they go from here? Because you really can't. It looks to me like they've reached the point where they can no longer please the audience like they used to, the main audience that actually watches it, the one they take for granted, which is people like us that have been watching it forever. And how can they make it exciting for everybody again, rather than just the mass audience appeal that they're trying to get, which they've actually achieved this year? I mean, it seems like it's an impossible job at this point.
Okay, DWC.
Yeah, I've been actually waiting to pick up on a point that Philip made. He was saying how why didn't Graham just kill Tim Shaw for killing his wife? Well, I have to bring up a point. Is that honestly what Grace would have wanted? You have to think about that. Does he think Grace would have wanted Graham to have killed someone in her name?
It's a very valid point, because the second he would have pulled that trigger, he'd become a different person altogether. You see, that's the thing. Like I said, with revenge, if you go on the path of revenge, dig two graves, one for the person you're after and one for the yourself. It never ends profitably 99% of the time for that person. It's not a worthwhile pursuit. It's really not. Okay, what did you want to add, Bo, since you're popped in?
Yeah, if you kill someone, you're no better than them.
Exactly. That's the point. That's just the basic point all characters have been through. You know, if he had pulled that trigger, he'd have become somebody that I don't think, I'd have to go, wait a minute, what?
I think the Doctor even says that in the episode.
I think by imprisoning him in his own capsule, he took the higher route. And like I said, you can theorize that Tim Shaw is going to get out of it all you want, but I have an eerie feeling that I think we're done with him. At least I'm hoping we're done with him, because he's kind of played out his story as far as I'm concerned. Okay, Paul, you had your hand up first. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to go back, I think you were talking about it a couple of weeks ago, and to follow on from what Tim was saying, what was the name of that soup?
Mexicali soup syndrome.
That's the one. Well, that's what I think they've done to our program that we all love. They've taken little bits out to try and appease everyone, and now it's just a bland soup. And
like I said, this one, they almost got it. They were almost there. Like I said, they were within a fingernail's reach of the brass ring, but they still fell a little short in some areas. They really did. Okay, Philip.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, what you guys are saying about if Graham did do what he wanted to do, he'd be no better than them. But then that's like saying, okay, shoot my son, shoot my mum, I won't do anything about it. That's a cop-out kind of thing. If that was me, I would have no qualms shooting that person back if they did some harm to my wife, my whatever. That's not realistic enough. What you're saying is not realistic. Automatic human response is to shoot back if someone that you love is harmed. You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't feel realistic enough. And if you want Doctor Who to grow up and become a bit more exciting for you and all that, go that extra mile, do that extra thing. You understand that?
Yeah, but you're basically saying Graham should have killed Tim Shaw then.
Yes, why not?
And
A man is willing to destroy planets, whole planets, just for his own little excitement. And yet, all you do is lock him in a little freezer, which he can quite happily get out of one day.
could get out of. We don't know that.
Well, he could influence some of the people that are guarding him and, coerce him.
There's nobody guarding him. Remember, even the Ooks left the planet.
Right. Well, if he's got some sort of signaling device that signals to the others, to the other tensors that are around the universe, they pick up the signal, come and get him.
But that's the same thing with every villain going back to the dawn of time. Even your villains you've killed. To take an example, comic books, like how many times has such and such been killed, yet they find a way to come back from the grave. And like I said, I'm hoping that, that I think Tim Shaw's story is pretty much over. At least I hope they get the cue and say it's over.
I get that. I understand that his story might be over. It's just the fact that I reckon he should have got his just desserts rather than that simple.
But let me ask you the question. If Graham had killed him,
Yeah.
what would that have done to Graham O'Brien?
Nothing. He's honoured the death of his wife. I got my revenge for losing Grace. I'm fine with that.
You think he really could have lived with that?
Yeah, why not?
Oh, okay, DWC, you keep flashing your hand up and down like it's about to strobe off the screen. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, because I have to just bring up some filth. I mean, say if someone killed your wife or husband or whatever, then you'd kill them back. No, Philip, I call the authorities, hope he gets caught, and let the legal system challenge it. And there is an intergalactic legal system. Yeah, maybe they could have gone in that direction. And also, on your point about, what if he has a device that can contact all the other Stentor, he spent 3,407 years alone. He would have used it already. I'm pretty sure he has nothing.
Also, let me add this. If you want to throw that in, then by definition, you're saying Tom Baker should have crossed the wires. Peter Davison should have shot Davros. See what I mean? It doesn't.
Yeah. Tom Baker was going to sort of like cross the wires and blow up the Daleks at incubation stage. Would you have said he did wrong then? Would you have said that was wrong that he did that if he did it?
Because yes, that would have been altering how many histories of how many planets going to, how far into the future. Like he said, even though the Daleks are an evil force, there were thousands, if not millions, of races in the future that banded together who would have normally never done so in the name of fear of the Daleks. So yes, even though, as he states at the end of the episode, out of their evil came a greater good. So, but the thing is, like I said, comeuppance is one thing, but basically you're trying to say, like I said, Davison should have shot Davros in his chair back in Resurrection of the Daleks. See what I mean? Revenge never works out, whether you like to admit it or not. If he had killed Tim Shaw, that would have been killing a piece of himself. It's like, how do you think Grace would have been, judged him?
I've also got to say, Brian was saying, what would have that done? How do you think that would have changed Graham? Well, you've also got to think, how do you think the others would have seen Graham? How do you think the Doctor would have looked at Graham? How would have Yaz looked at Graham? How would have Ryan looked at Graham?
Yeah, because you're basically teaching your grandson it's okay to kill as long as it's justified. You see what I mean? It's a very slippery slope. Okay, Connor, you had your hand up. Next one.
I think that the issue here is that while Graham was obviously in a very moral sort of situation where in series gone by, we would probably say that, yeah, it would be wrong to kill. I think that it's Jodie's character. There's something about Jodie's presence that she's not like like Tom Baker you mentioned, and we've seen Matt Smith blow up a whole Dalek fleet with regeneration energy. These doctors have no fear in going that far if it's absolutely necessary. Absolutely necessary. Jodie would not dare poke a monster out of fear that it would hurt the monster. She's a bit like a conservationist, where, you know, she finds all these things really fascinating, but she just doesn't want to harm them. And then you weigh up against what, like, Tim Shaw's doing, and, you know, what the Pating's done, or what, you know, the Thajarians have done, or all them various monsters that we've had, how they've killed people. And, you know, Tim Shaw specifically has wiped out races. He's committed genocide, and he's got a plan to commit further genocide. She's too nice to monsters, because I guess it's this whole thing about wonder and adventure, and, you know, she kind of like wants to respect everyone. It's this whole, like, you're saying that we should care what Grace thinks. Well, should we? Like, should we care what anyone thinks, really? Because we're told in real life not to care what people think about your own personal decisions, because if you don't care about what people think, then you never get anything done. So to me, it just feels like the Doctor is just too much of a pacifist. That's my point. That's going to be my point throughout this entire cast, is that she will not poke a monster out of fear that it will hurt, that the monster will recoil and will be hurt by that little poke. She's too nice to everything, and it's just making her dull and boring. There's no inner conflict. We've seen Doctors gone by have very prominent inner conflict. So David Tennant was one of them, Peter Capaldi, Tom Baker. All the best Doctors have had some form of inner conflict. She's just sussed out. It feels like she's just sussed. So she can just walk through any episode, and, like, there's no impact on her whatsoever. And again, just this whole thing about she just doesn't want to hurt anything or hurt any monster, in spite of what they're doing to people. And that's not what the Doctor has really been for 50, 60 odd years, I think. There has always been a certain degree of, like, moral... there's certainly been a moral compass where I think that sometimes he's wanted to take that risk. But with Jodie, it's like it's not an option. She just wants to... She would rather see Tim Shaw roam around the galaxy without weapons that could cause this destruction, rather than, like, see him off and then end the danger there, which would be a decision that I'm sure other Doctors in past would consider. It just feels like she's just too much of a goodie. And I think that kind of started to grate on Graham a bit at the beginning, where he just really wanted to kill Tim Shaw. And then it almost felt to me like there was a little bit of a vibe of he couldn't trust her to deal with the problem anymore, because she just wouldn't deal with it. Because we know from The Woman Who Fell to Earth that all she did was teleport him off back to where he came from, and then see what happened. He got medicine, he medically restored himself, and then he wanted to cause more havoc. So in a way, she's just setting it up for more danger, really. And I feel like that's what's going to become of this Doctor. She's a hypocrite as well.
Well, you see, there's the thing. I seem to remember that she put 5 DNA bombs in Tim Shaw, gave him the option, look, either go home or else. And then it was what's his name who kicked him off the platform, and then he got a hold of the thing, which led to him escaping. So
even still, though, the installation of DNA bombs had no effect, clearly, because he wanted to cause even more havoc in this episode. So I just, you know, I don't think anyone takes it seriously, is what I'm saying.
But like I said, if you want to go down that route, you better not order your Peter Davison set. Oh, talk about Mr. Goody Two-Shoes. Okay, Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with everything Connor's just said. Everything. Yeah, she's too Goody Two-Shoes now. Even more than Peter Davison. Going back to what Philip was saying, I'm going to be hated for this, but I agree with him in one respect. However, in another respect, he was put in a jail, but in another respect as well, don't America have the death penalty in some parts of the USA? And perhaps Graham might have felt better with that. Maybe, I don't know. What was I going to say about Graham? Yes, that was it. Going back to what Phil was saying, I think a lot of that emotion of wanting to kill someone is either A, at the point that someone you've loved has been killed. That is the immediate reaction that you will want to do in the split second, which is when normally things like that happen. Or later on, like what's happened in the story, the first time he's met him again, that emotion will bubble up again and he'll want to do that again. But I think 9 out of 10 people during the initial, shall we say, beating them up stage, that is as far as it would go. So whether they could have made it a little bit more dramatic like that, that might have appeased Philip and a few others that might be thinking the same way.
I'll just quickly say, but the point is, though, Graham had the opportunity to do that. But then it could, what would happen if Tim Shaw said, you can't kill me, but I can kill you, and just killed him outright? You have to take the
I'm
first
just
step.
loving how murder is being made into such a black and white freaking issue. Once he pulled that trigger, I hate to sell you some bad news. Once you go over that line and you take a life, there's no coming back. No, there isn't. There's no rehabilitation. There's no happy ending. You're not coming back.
Human beings are not fairies.
And let me ask you a bigger question. Would killing him have brought Grace back?
No, but it would have satisfied.
Then what's the point? Why give a piece of yourself to some piece of shit?
Then what's the point of Tim Shaw killing her by proxy?
Because I don't know about you, but spending the rest of eternity in one of your own trophy cases, unable to escape, I think that's pretty nasty. I think that's a lot worse than death.
But we don't know the true extent of the Stenzer's power.
And then Philip, he should have just killed him. Yeah, right. Write your way out of that one. I want to see that plot line. I want to see how he happily just forgets that he just committed murder. Also, with the way these writers are going. Yeah, okay. It's not like it could be all sunshine and daisies after that, really. Okay, B.
Ice cream and say it was all good.
Look, we can argue till the cows come home about whether Graham should or shouldn't and everything like that, and Tim Shaw falls on the floor and help, I can't get up. It's a moot point, really. The idea of criticism is trying to be constructive with it. Tim Shaw really didn't have an axe to grind with Graham. He had an axe to grind with the Doctor. Now, for me, if I wanted to make it good, because this story just seems really jumbled. Even the message is jumbled. The only thing that you can, excuse my stupid Christmas clock, but it's a jumbled message, and the only thing that you can get is that revenge is bad. It would have made more sense to me that if the Doctor had fixed the problems with getting the planets back to where they had to be, and then Tim Shaw comes into the room. Now, we've already had evidence of this with David Tennant with the Sycorax and the Christmas of Rachel, saying no more, different person, no more second chances. You could have had the Doctor go to be that point of the aggressor, or even Petralki to do that, and then it's Graham that talks it down, because then you get character evolution, then you get a lesson learned. It just seems jumbled and mixed up is the way it could have been done. It could have been done so much better. It could have made the Doctor everything that people have wanted it to be. So it could say, do I do it? The moral outrage of you've taken away these 5 planets and everything like that, and then Graham talks the Doctor down. That would have been, for me, a far better ending to it. And say, Doc, you've always told me there's got to be a better way to this. And then they put him in the stasis chamber. But this story was just bad.
Then we would have heard the story again about how Graham who. Okay, Bo, you had your hand up. Good.
Yeah, going on from what Dr. Freedom said, I'll just give you a quote that Yoda said in Star Wars. Once you go down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. And assume you will.
For very wise words from very wise words from that infamous Jewish guy who gave us Star Wars. Yep. Once you go down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny, and that's very true. Callan.
Yeah, well, Graham thought at the start of the story, Graham was going to kill Tim Shaw, but when he get a chance to do it, he thought better of it, which was, I think that's quite good. It's easy to say I'm going to kill you, and then you. Yeah, I think Graham's a better man for deciding not to kill him.
Yeah, he shot him in the foot instead, which I got a kick out of. I shot you, but I only shot him in the foot. But also, a lot of people are skipping over something else. There's another very wise saying, and it came out of Harry Potter, unfortunately. Sooner or later, we're going to have to choose between what is right and what is easy. The Doctor could have averted the situation very easily by, disconnecting the Ooks. But the problem is, that means I'm going to have to sacrifice these two to save how many. Now, you could go with the, needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few argument. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I can kill two people and save all these people, but, what does that make me in the end if I'm willing to kill these two people outright? But instead found a better solution using the inhibitors, turning them into inhibitors, those little head gadgets we've been talking about. Like I said, I think the main reason, I have to bring this up now, was I had been reading a lot of weird fan theories over the last 48 hours. And I was halfway expecting, this is what I was really expecting, and this would have really made it bland for me. I was halfway expecting it to turn out to be one of those little time doohickeys where they wound up on desolation, and this is desolation in the past. Because that was one of the big theories, and it was sounding plausible. And then, okay, now you can't do this, this, and this because you're going to alter the history where you find the TARDIS, and that's going to cause a paradox. And I'm glad they didn't go down that route, because to me, that would have been ultimate bland. It really would have been. Because then, okay, now you're just dealing with the whole time as the enemy threat again. But like I said, there was a lot of very hard decisions to make in this episode. And instead of just whizzing the Sonic and doing it, they had to come up with this very clever way of doing it using, the equipment available. They used the TARDIS to help take these planets back to where they were before the thing shattered. And I thought, okay, that's a pretty damn good resolution, They could have done the easy route, wave the Sonic, and it's better, just like they did in Power of Three, which really pissed me off. But instead, they came up with a nifty way using the TARDIS and the Ooks to deal with this. And I thought that was pretty good. It wasn't an obvious thing. It wasn't something you would have thought of off the top of your head. So I got to give them marks for at least that. But like I said, we could argue the, moral, the moral things of revenge to the end of time. And we're not going to get any closer to the solution than anyone has in the past how many thousand years. Same thing with the death penalty argument. That's been going on for ever since the guillotine, I think, got rolled out, or even sooner. And so it's a very old, very complex argument. Okay, so since no hands are going up, I think we're pretty much covered a lot of ground. The last thing I want to cover real quick before we move on is this nifty thing. Oh, yes, let's restart a series and then do a gap year. That's going to work out well. So if anyone have an opinion on why or what you feel about the fact you're probably not getting Doctor Who back until January 2020. I'll start at the top here with Bo. Go ahead.
What's the point with all these gap years? I mean, if the BBC hate Doctor Who that much, why don't they just sell it off to Netflix and be done with it?
Okay, Texas Tim.
I agree. This is just getting tiresome. I mean, I don't know why they hold on to the property if they can't produce it regularly. There's no reason for this at all. I mean, unless they know something we don't. And the truth is, we just had a gap year in 2016, right? I mean, what's the purpose? How hard is it to cough up a series of 10 episodes, or even 8 if you want to reduce the number again? This is just pointless. And like you said, if this was a relaunch, and this was the second relaunch of the series in about 2 years, how dare you take a year off? Are you that incompetent? I mean, come on. Either get the show on the road or F off.
Okay, Beef.
Yeah, I to a degree, I agree with what Tim is saying. Yeah, there's been some sort of like weird shrouded statement saying there's a reason we're doing for it, but we can't really tell you. We know what we're doing, but you've just built up this supposed momentum. You've got this sort of movement behind you. So why do you want to just take the wheels off from it? And not being funny, it's sort of, look, if you want to harp it back to what's gone before and everything like that, Russell T Davies did it. And you could say, well, times have changed and everything like that. But to get Chris Chibnall on board, and Chris Chibnall was like the big swinger producer and everything like that, Broadchurch, the biggest drama show on TV. Don't tell me the BBC did not court him and woo him to a certain degree, and they're going to afford him every opportunity to make the show he wants. So, and you've gone down to 10 episodes, so why the hell can't you put something out like that? You can say, well, this is you guys being entitled fans, but sorry, if I pay a license fee, I can say what I bloody well like.
You see, I agree with you, because I can't remember which year it was, but remember when they were actually still filming when the damn show was airing to get the final episodes done? It's like, really? You can't pump out 10 episodes inside of a year? Come on, we got American production companies that pump out 23 freaking episodes hour long every year. And they get it done. But you can't use it's quality issue bullshit, because frankly, we've got some very good quality shows that have been doing this for years.
And not being funny though, if you're going to say we're going to delay it for that long, then at the very least say, well, do you know what? Yeah, but we're going to come back. We're going to come back in 2020. We're going to come back. And instead of 10 episodes, you're going to get 13 or 12 episodes, and you're going to get a Christmas special. It's just basically leaving everyone in limbo. It's bad business.
Exactly, because as of right now, I think they've said they can't even confirm we're going to get a Christmas special in 2019, even carry it over, which is like, really? You're kidding me? Come on. Even with Capaldi, they still put out Count Mysterio, or Dr. Mysterio the one year. They at least give you something to look forward to. But, it's like, come on, really? But, okay, see, I'm going random. Let's go for Connor.
I guess if you want to feed into the rumours, it's I think the BBC, not the BBC one, the Doctor Who official Twitter said early 2020. If that was January 2020, then in effect, you're only really a year away from it in 3 weeks' time. And we've still got one episode to go before that year wait starts. So it's kind of, to me, it doesn't even feel like a gap year. It's just kind of like it just feels a bit weird that, that we're not getting an episode. Well, we are getting an episode, but we're not getting a full series in 1 year. Sort of like, so we won't see anything in 2019. It feels a lot like a longer time because we're skipping 2019, I think, even though it will in effect be, if it starts then, only a year. But honestly, I think the BBC are just finding Doctor Who so insufferable to make, because I think that there's no interest in it whatsoever. The whole thing about trying to coax Chris Chibnall into the role, like Moffat had to work so damn hard to get him even remotely interested. It's just kind of indicative of like how it's viewed. I just think it is an absolute poison chalice these days, and just people don't want to touch it with a barge pole. And at the same time, I really cannot fault the BBC, because especially this year, as someone who's a great fan of drama, who watches all the 9 p.m. dramas on a Sunday, they've been putting out some really quality stuff. And when you pay the license fee, that's the sort of stuff you want to see. I mean, they've had 2 BBC dramas over this past week be nominated for Golden Globes, which is a big achievement for the BBC. So to sort of have that success and then come back and have to like deal with Doctor Who, I kind of understand that maybe from a business perspective, it's a bit of a damp squib. So they kind of want to find any excuse they can to kind of just like delay it a bit more, because it's just like, it's a bit of a weight on their shoes. But yeah, I kind of don't want to rant at the BBC, because I'm of the agreement that, like, I'm, like I said earlier, I just will not shed any tears over this gap year, because it just kind of, this episode particularly has left me so cold. This series as a whole has left me so cold compared to how Series 8 did, when we had to wait quite a long time for Series 9, and then even longer for Series 10. You know, that it just feels like two completely different worlds now. It just feels like I can just wait. I could wait 5 years for a new series of Doctor Who. You know, I don't think that they've built the correct momentum, or they've built a fan base back up. I mean, there's no problem with the viewing figures. They haven't built the right momentum where, like, you're going, oh my god, I can't wait until the next series, sort of thing. So it just kind of feels like an effortless sort of wait, particularly to me. Well, that's only personally to me.
Besides, yeah, nobody wants the job. Let's say they called me up and said, Dr. Freedom, do you want to be the showrunner for, Doctor Who? I'd be like, no, thanks, because then I'd be looking out my window every day, halfway expecting to see a group of guys wearing multicolored scarves and fedoras burning an effigy of me in my front yard. Okay, it's a very frightening fandom. It very is. Oh, okay, DWC.
Just to go, I kind of agree with Connor. I don't think it's actually going to be that long. It's not potentially going to be that long. We're only thinking that because of it's in 2020, but it could easily be January. As for why it's happening, you could maybe argue because it took the BBC a long time to really understand how you should work the TV license now. But if I was to go complete conspiracy theory, I mean, we all heard the thing that supposedly Chimnall was going to be leaving after this series and Jodie was going with him, and that what turned out, well, Jodie at least, that was, well, as it's turned out, that's not true. But I was reading a Bleeding Cool, or skimming through a Bleeding Cool article, and from what I understand, what they were suggesting, and they've been right and wrong from time to time, but they were suggesting it was actually sort of half true, in that that rumor was actually started because of a bad day at the BBC. But so if there's any truth to that, it could equally be because Chimnall's not on the greatest terms with the BBC at the moment, and maybe they're just trying to have a bit of breathing space at this point.
Well, it could be that. Yeah, I read the same article. Yeah, they said basically what had happened was it was one bad day at the BBC. The situation had already been resolved well before Starburst magazine even put out the article, which is why a lot of people were surprised they did, because it was basically that. It could have been an argument. It could have been a way caught, or better yet, the other conspiracy theory is, and I can't wait for this one to crop up, either Jodie or Mandip are pregnant. Let's just say, well, I know I haven't been to England lately, so it's not my fault. Okay, Philip.
Would it be just a simple case of the money they spent on this season have run out, they've got no money, right? So they've got to give them some time to build it all up again. And the fact that merchandise sales is not very good anyway, so money is a problem, and that's what it is. And then you also got the fact of Graham, well, actually, the Bradley Walsh, he's got other projects to do. So they probably haven't got him in the window to do any more Doctor Who for this year, for next year, until he's done what he's got to do on his projects and all that.
That's very true. I'd completely forgotten that. Yeah, you're right. He signed up to another project. And I'm beginning to wonder if maybe that's not part of it. Maybe that's part of the production delay. Not sure. Don't know. Okay, Paul, you've had your hand up for a while. Go ahead.
Yeah, when I first heard the news, part of me was a bit pissed, if I can say that, peeved off. But like the others have said, it's not that much of a gap year now. Going back to that argument, apparently it was Chibs had with the BBC, and he threatened to leave or something. But if you're a showrunner in one argument and then you're threatening to leave, you're not a very good showrunner just because you're not getting your own way. And if Jodie wants to follow him, as the news said, then she's not in this role for the love of it then. Like a lot of the other doctors were in this role for the love of the role. That Capaldi wanted to be the Doctor since he was little. So he always wanted to do that. Tennant wanted to be the Doctor. He grew up with it. He loved it. Matt Smith, I'm not sure if he liked it, but a lot of the other Doctors, they all grew up with Doctor Who and they wanted to be the Doctor. But if Jodie hasn't got that love for Doctor Who, then off you go, then sod off, as far as I'm concerned. And the same with Chibs. And then next year, if we've got to wait till 2020 for a new show, hopefully we can get some better writers in, because that's what's been missing from this show, is the writing. get some better writers and hopefully some better actors.
Yeah, first off, like I said, I'd lock them all in a room. I'd surround it by SAS commandos armed with heavy weapons. So you're not allowed to walk out of there till you come up with a working concept that everyone's really going to enjoy for next year. And that's going to be a hell of a challenge because it seems like you can never satisfy anybody all the time. But like I said, yeah, I definitely agree with you. They need to bring in writers who are more experienced with this particular show. And that, also someone needs to tell Chibs, Moffat didn't write half his seasons. Okay, he had input on the episodes, but he only mainly wrote the opening episode and then the closing episode and maybe a special for that year. He didn't write half the season on his own. It's like, I would have walked up and said, hey, Chibs, come here. Listen, lean in real close. Patrick Ness, you idiot! Oh, okay. All right, Texas Tim, go ahead.
Well, everybody's making good points and good excuses, but I mean, at the end of the day, like Beef said, it's not. This is unprofessional. I mean, you don't relaunch a show and then take a year off. I mean, and the truth is, isn't the model broken at this point? Shouldn't the structure be that you have a producer that minds the money and hires the talent and a script editor, not necessarily head writer, but maybe so. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm assuming that maybe he just doesn't have enough scripts ready, and they want to give him some time to write. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm just assuming, like everybody else is. But I mean, this model doesn't work for the show, and there's no reason that they, like Connor said, they've had a lot of great dramas the last couple of years that they managed to do with nobody talking about it. It all gets budgeted. They have great writers, great directors, great actors making fine programs for the BBC. That's never been a problem. Why is it so hard to get this out? They have they still cough up 8 episodes of Call the Midwife once a year. It's never been a problem for them. I know that that's not an expensive program to make, but at the end of the day, they get it done with little or no fanfare. Nobody complains when it doesn't show up or whatever. This is ridiculous. This is their biggest seller as far as merchandising and as far as worldwide. It is their most popular program. They need to start treating it that way. And I'm just saying that there's no reason why the production should have to take a break every year or so. That's just ridiculous and unprofessional. At the end of the day, that's the point.
Exactly. Back during the classic series, look at how many episodes they filmed a year on a budget that basically, if I were to travel back in time and I met, say, William Hartnell or Patrick Troughton, and I showed them the current budget for this series as of like this year, they'd have both died laughing of heart attacks right then, because they're like, you're actually kidding me. They're going to spend this much and only make that many episodes? Are you freaking joking? It's like we're spending not even 1/10 of that now, and we're pumping out 20-something serials a year or more. Okay, Bill.
Sorry, I had to get my unmute there. Yeah, at this point, I don't know. It's like they're really trying to tank the show because it takes a serious reject, echoing what everybody said here, to say, hey, let's bring the show back on and now everyone could just piss off. I mean, what are they smoking? It must be really bad. I don't want it.
Definitely, yeah. Either something's made it into the water down there, Okay, Connor.
You got to ask yourself what made Chris Chibnall on the brink of wanting to quit a show after 1 year in one day. Usually things like that make producers or directors or writers consider it quitting shows is a key chain of events, not just one day. So then you ask yourself, is the guy a prima donna? Probably. Is the guy slightly unprofessional about this show? Probably. It's passionless. He's not doing it with any sort of love. If that is what he's saying, if that report by Bleeding Cool is remotely true, I will go out on a limb and say that Chris Chibnall should just be sacked because it's passionless. And honestly, you're insulting a fan base, you're insulting a paying audience, and you're not worth the pennies that you've paid. Sorry for the language. I just feel like, again, especially with Jodie as well, if it's that bad after one day and they're considering quitting, like Paul said, I think they should just go. Just let people with a slight bit of passion and a slight bit of love for the show take over. and just see it fly, which I'm sure probably in this day and age it still can. We've seen brilliant series of Doctor Who in recent years. Series 10 was one of them. You know, I just feel like you just got to get rid of this passionless ideology around the show and just bring back some remnants of love and care and attention to it, rather than just like palming it off every year as just being like this filler show that just takes up part of the schedule and will just focus on everything else. You know, I think it's insulting at this point, to be fair.
Okay, 2 more people. We're going to start wrapping up. Okay, Paul.
Yeah, with what's going on, it sort of slightly worries me because it reminds me back of the days of Colin Baker, what started happening with his episodes. We started getting, you know, it spaced out. It was left for a year out and all that. And it's kind of starting to feel a little bit like that the BBC are heading towards that cancellation button. But it might not be that, and I'm hoping it is nothing like that. It might be just the fact that they've got a shit showrunner and an actress who doesn't really have any love for the role she's in.
Okay, Philip, you're going to be last.
Okay. On top of what's just been said by a couple of people, also bring back Doctor Who in line with what it's supposed to be. Don't put in all this social idealisms that they put into the show these days. It doesn't need to be there. We live with this sort of thing in our day-to-day life. We don't want to see it on a TV show, kind of thing. A bit like, say, when you come back from school after learning a lot about history, you don't want to come and watch Doctor Who and watch history again. You want to watch something that's going to take you out of your day-to-day drudgery. You understand what I'm saying there? All right.
Yeah. But like I said, there's no excuse for a gap year at all. Like I said, I got to wrap this up because we've been running well over an hour now. So, all right, what do you want to say real quick, Paul? Go ahead.
I just want to say, baby, it's cold outside.
Okay, so love it, hate it, weird out about it. Sadly, yeah, after the New Year's Day special, we're going to be waiting till early 2020. That's what they're saying, before we're going to get the next series. So we probably aren't going to see again till New Year's Day. But okay, let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and rate this sucker and put it to bed. So starting at the top this time, Kellen, what do you give the Battle of Ranskoor of Kolos?
I'll give it an 8 out of 10.
Okay. Bo?
8.5.
All right. Connor?
I'll give it a 5.5.
All right. DWC?
5.
Wow. Okay. Philip? Got to unmute Philip.
It could have been so much better. It wasn't as bad as I'm thinking in my head it is. So I'm going to give it a decent 6.5.
All right. Paul?
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as I think it was. It wasn't bad. It was more Doctor Who than I thought it would be. I like the sci-fi elements to it and that. So, but story-wise, it was lacking. Like I said before, it's lacking its soul. So it's only a 6.5 from me, and that's bad for an end-of-season episode.
Okay. Beef?
Was the music good? Yes. Did it look good? Yes. Was the story good? Hell no, it was crap. Don't let Chris Chibnall write anymore. Yeah, I'll give it a 4 out of 10. The story was just shockingly bad. It was not a season finale, and it takes a lot for me to say, do you know what? I'm at the point where if I walked away, I wouldn't be bothered. If it goes on a break for a year, I don't care. If it went on a 5-year break, yeah, probably I'd rather it went on that and they came back and just did it again, to be honest with you. It's just bad.
All right. Bill?
Wow. You know, like the previous episode, it at least went back in the direction of science fiction, but for the few good things I've said about it, there's still so much that was just cringeworthy. And yeah, and this is keeping in mind that it's one of the 2 best episodes of the entire season. When I say this, I'm going to be kind and give it a 4.5.
Okay. Texas Tim?
7.
And I'm going to derail this train, and I'm saying 9. I enjoyed this episode. There was not a frickin' thing wrong with it. No, there wasn't. I think we've got a classic case of everybody walked into this episode expecting to see something, and it didn't happen. So now let's throw a fit about it. I'm sorry. That's my opinion on it, and I think that's what it's going to turn out to be. But, oh well. Let's go ahead and get out of here. So we'll see you all New Year's Day. So until then, everybody take care. Ta-ta. Enjoy the rest of your week. See you on the flip side. Good night.